Hello and good evening. Welcome back to my channel. This is Righteous. On today's video, we are going to cover combat in Age of Wonders Planetfall. Now, I know what you're thinking. This doesn't look like the game, but I fully geeked out this afternoon and I made this hex grid. And I think it's appropriate to start this video with the basic understanding of the mechanics of how combat starts, how to bring enemies into combat, and those kinds of things. At a later point in the video, I will jump into the game and showcase some other tips and stuff like that. So let's crack on. So the white area represents the hexes that are related to each other. So for example, if the enemy comes in, surrounds my army, and initiates a fight, whoever initiates the fight will move into the hex, and the hex becomes the center point, and it will bring in the outer 6 hexes. So for example, if this enemy unit attacks me here, this becomes the center point, and the center point will always bring in every hex that it's touching on its outer rim. In this case, or in all cases, it's 6. It will bring in all of the surrounding armies that are touching those hexes. So he'll bring in his 2 extra armies and I'll bring in my 2. And so essentially this is how the fight will line up. So let's show you what that looks like in the actual game. So here's the example of the game. In this case I have 2 armies and I've engaged a enemy army. So I've engaged the fight, so the enemy army will always be in the center. If he had supporting units, they would fill up these areas, or I would fill up these areas. So these 6 squares represent the 6 hexes, and then the smaller squares within each square represents individual units. So point 2, sometimes a stack can have different movement points, or a unit within a stack can have different movement points. So let's say, for example, this unit has a hero that has a mod that gives him extra movement points. So he's now moved in, but he's got no more movement points. You can take out that hero that's got the extra movement points, take him out and move him to engage the enemy, and leaving the other 5 units behind. And that will still draw in your army. And the hero will still start with the army in this position. So it's a good way of managing and taking that little extra movement or that little extra turn in case you need to take out a city or another unit. But bear in mind that that unit, the single unit that initiated the combat, will then move into this area, and the 5 other units will remain here. Now another example is when you face an army of this size. Same principles apply. If I come in and attack, so I attack with this guy, this is the central hex, it brings in these 2 armies. So assuming I've got a better army than this guy, these get wiped out and I move into here. Now that's fine because my 3 units are protecting me. He could then come in the next turn and do something like this, which is obviously quite serious. So you need to bear that in mind when taking out the stacks. So you need to be sure your army can handle that, because you'll probably get injuries. You may have 1 or 2 units die. So that's the risk. But assuming that your armies are good, you want to target and pick off the weaker units. So if I go back, an optimal move would be to have control of this, would be to have this guy attack. So these 3 units then get taken out. Then all I need to do is move him 1 more time and then move this guy, and then I can attack and bring in just these 2 armies. So let's attack with him. We'll probably be out of movement points by this point. And then I just need to survive his 4 stacks. Now the chances are not all of his stacks will be fully 6. Not all of his units will be modded. The AI doesn't when it has an army of this size, it usually comprises a lot of units that are not modded or are half an army or something like that. So the basic principles apply. You can take out large armies like this. So my last point is dealing with city centres, this black ring as an example. A city centre will still act like a unit in terms of initiating. So if I attack the colony, it will bring in the surrounding squares just like a normal battle would. So if you've got the enemy defending like this and I come in and attack, that will bring in these 3 armies and it will bring in any military defense that is within the colony. Now on the map, on the actual map, when you go into the manual combat, the defenses will start with the central unit, so they'll have a much bigger army in that starting position. But one thing that catches me out quite a lot, and I see noobs getting this done, and it literally happened to me the other day. Because the colony acts as a active point or a place that you can attack, and it draws in the surrounding areas, don't be tricked into doing this. So I've attacked, and now I've moved on because there's an army down here that I need to pay attention to, or there's another, I want to take up all my movement points. And so I've moved off like this. So initially you think, oh, this looks great because I'm defending myself with my 3 units. But if I need my red guy, come back. So we're down here. So let's say a red army comes in on the next turn and then attacks. This will bring in this unit and I could get obliterated in that move. And then he can follow forward with his 3 armies and then engage me here and take me out. So I've lost whole armies through this cock-up. So be mindful of that. Just because you've got your 3 defending, it doesn't mean this guy won't get drawn into a fight with a colony. So the next tip is when starting a mission, or just in general, always fight the enemies guarding these things. I see players leaving enemies alone all the time. And maybe they think, oh, I'm not annexing that sector, so I don't need to grab whatever specialization this particular unit is protecting. But always fight them, because A, you get experience for your units and so they'll upgrade quicker, but you also get rewards. So if we look at this particular pickup, when collected, it instantly produce 1 of 2 randomly picked colony upgrades. Essentially, that's basically saying we'll give you a free building. It's usually a military base. Let's have a quick look. Oh, gotta go through the story. So there we go. Central reactor core, which is an energy, the energy center, and the specialized training facilities. So that's pretty big, and that will now have that building in my colony. So always grab and attack enemies, even if they're a little bit out of the way. Make that a priority. That's, for me, strategy 101 when it comes to combat and upgrading and advancing through the game as quickly as possible. So, Imperial Standards. So this guy here, or this stack, you can see it's got like a red Roman flag, and if I click on this stack, it will say Imperial Standard. Now what this does is the army that is going to go on to the hex that standard is on will all get an upgrade, a free upgrade. So if I move this stack on here, let's just quickly check what this guy is. So he's level 5, this one's got no promotions, and he is 8 experience away. These 2 have got, so they will, all 5 of these units will get a promotion. So let's quickly do that. Oh, this is another tip I was going to make. I see a lot of people allow them to retreat. If you allow the units to retreat, there will be no battle. You gain no experience. So you'll get 0 experience. You'll probably still get the promotion. I've never actually had this happen on an Imperial Standard. But the point is, never allow a unit to retreat, because you get no experience and it's an easy victory. So I'm going to chase them down. And let's auto battle this. So now they will all be promoted. So you can now see they've all got that extra potion, and this hero is now level 6. Do note, it only applies to the unit or the stack moving onto the hex. So if I had 3 stacks around, it would not give the promotion to the other stacks surrounding the hex. It's only the moving unit that goes onto that hex. So that's the Imperial Standard. Don't avoid those. A good strategy is to put your heroes all into one stack and attack it with your heroes, and then all your heroes will get a free promotion. So when engaging in battle, you have manual battle and you have auto combat. So the auto combat is when the AI will automatically do it for you. I spend most of my game doing auto combat just because manual combat takes so long. Sometimes it's quite fun to do a manual combat, and sometimes in tight battles you need to do a manual combat. If you do an auto combat and it completes, there is an option at the end to replay the battle, and that's a good way of learning how to get better at the skills. But for this point, what I wanted to mention is down there at the bottom, just above where it says manual combat, there is an R3, because I'm on my PS5. It says tactical operations and auto combat. You can toggle it on and off. The AI tends to use tactical operations when you're in auto combat. Now, sometimes it's very easy to forget to turn that off. It saves energy if you turn it off, and maybe on the same go you've got another stack elsewhere that needs to rely on those tactical operations. So remember to turn this off, especially on easy battles, because that will save a lot. So in this particular case, it would be wise to have the tactical operations on. I'm probably going to manual that one later, but there's another stack up here, which is a very easy win. So definitely turn off the manual, the tactical operations for this auto combat. So when you lose a sector or colony to an enemy, the way the game works is all you need to do is move a unit back onto that sector or colony, and it will recapture it. So I lost this landmark to a marauder unit, which is over here. They've left, so I can now take that peacefully without a battle. So all I need to do is just move on it, and it will simply become mine. And I'll annex it back into my empire. And that's all you need to do. Do note though, if you lose your colony and you go back on it, you will lose certain buildings. So where is my colony? Here it is. So with the colony, you will lose all your cosmite buildings. You won't lose any of your sector buildings, so you won't lose any sector upgrades, anything related to a sector, but you will lose anything that is related to the colony center. So the diplomatic analysis wing, all your cosmite buildings. So it's worth protecting your colony that little bit extra, because if that gets taken, you will lose all those buildings. But that's it. It's as simple as that. You just move your unit back on and it will take it. So I have a strategy that if I get into a war and I'm a little bit up against it, if you like, I will have a scout unit just hovering around to just quickly pop on as soon as the enemy leaves that section, because that will reset the timer. So when an enemy comes on there, you will have a set timer of when that colony or sector becomes theirs permanently. And it's usually between 4 to 8 turns, depending on how established the sector is or the colony. But if you just pop a scout unit on there, it will reset the timer, it will take it back to you. You will have to rebuild your military bases and your military defenses, but it will reset the timer, and it just makes things annoying for them. So I always try to get into a habit of having a few scouts. As soon as war's declared on me, I'll bring my scouts back in, I'll just let them hover around. Okay, so in this example, I want to make the point, when you capture or defeat a player, so in this case this is the guy's capital and the hero is over here. So by attacking his capital, it will draw him into the fight and I'll be able to defeat this enemy in one battle. But the point here I want to make is, notice that all his cities have got a stack of enemies on them. So the way the game works is, when the enemy's defeated, if there's any cities or sectors that have an enemy stack on it, it won't convert to my side. So all these cities, this city up here, they will become marauder cities. So they'll become an independent city. So it's worth just bearing this in mind as you attack players. Sometimes you want to take over some of their cities, especially if they've got quite a lot of surrounding units, because they'll all become marauder units, and it can be quite annoying. So I've just come in here with my units. They're all out of movement points, but this guy has his hero and one other movement with a little bit of extra movement. So this builds on a previous point from earlier. If I move him out of the stack and attack the city centre, I will draw in all the surrounding people. I'm going to auto combat this for the sake of the video. I won, and so now he's defeated.
Objective completed.
And here you can now see that the enemy's stacks have now become marauder units, and all his cities and surrounding sectors have all become independent factions or independent players. So you can see that a little bit better on the map. So I've got to now go and conquer all these cities if I want to grab them, and there's quite a lot of independent units. So let's talk about military defences and military buildings. There are 3 levels of military buildings. We've got the standard at the beginning, then you can see on the pop-up there you've got the improved once you've built the first building, and then once we've got that we get the advanced building. Each level of building increases your defense by 1 unit. So initially, if I click on here, so in the middle, I'll try and get rid of this pop-up. So in the middle top information on the colony, you can see the militia power is 280. So every colony starts with 3 very basic units as a defense. So if I click on this and just buy it, so you can now see the colony militia power has gone up to 480. So that now has 4 units defending the colony. The next structure would be the improved structure, and then the advanced structure is the 3rd and final one, and that will obviously be 6 units. And then you've got the defense towers, which are like big turret guns, and it differs depending on the race that you're playing. So that's what happens with each building. It adds an additional unit. Now I have a theory, and I would love to hear your comments on whether I'm right or not. I believe the units that are used in the fight are related to what units you've unlocked. So the higher tiered units, if you've unlocked them, they will appear in your militia power. So if, for example, I unlocked my top unit here, tier 9,